We've been talking like everyone else, sort of nonstop about Deion Sanders, and I know they were curious for your opinion on some of that. Before we start, I have to put my sunglasses and hat on because this is how I talk to grown-ups.
This man came to a pod with props, bro.
What do you think of Colorado State's head coach saying his mom taught him to take his hat and sunglasses off when he talks to grown-ups, which obviously was a shot at Deion?
All right. I want to start by saying, because I go back with Jenkins. We go back. Like at this point, we got well over 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
When you think about it, right?
For
like
sure.
We're
2009.
We're like old friends at this point.
For sure.
And you know how I know that we're old friends? Because I'm actually willing to come on here and talk about Deion Sanders. Because y'all may have noticed that honestly, since like January or February, I've been kind of on this ain't a safe space.
Yeah. Right.
He's not a dude who lends to reasonable conversations.
No, and like I thought I was saying reasonable stuff about him before, and I actually thought I was being like really measured in talking about him before. And it just went off the rails, right? Like I can't think of anything that I have talked about, including like Colin Kaepernick, that has been as polarizing and all over the place as talking about Deion. So there's going to be some places when we talk about Deion where I'm going to be like, I'm still thinking about that. Because I actually find the whole situation to be totally fascinating on levels that I think a lot of people are missing.
Sure.
But I am glad that coach from Colorado State said that about Deion. Couple reasons. One, that's a rivalry game in that state. Rivalry games are supposed to be petty and silly. This is what it's supposed to feel like. Go out there, do it, say it, cool. Number two, this part's very important. I have heard a lot of people say that what they love about what's going on with Deion is how he's making so many people mad, right? I just love that he's making these white folks mad. Finally, one of these white people has actually emerged. Because I ain't seen none of these white people that's been so mad about Deion Sanders. Have you?
They love him,
right?
They love him in Boulder.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, I live in Harlem, you know what I'm saying? A Harlem that's still pretty black, and I don't really be interacting with strangers like that no more. So maybe I just ain't been around the right white people. But the white people I know don't really seem to have a problem with Deion. Like, people have ascribed this idea because they want to feel better about it, and don't nothing make the culture feel better than making white folks mad. Like that's it. Don't get me wrong. Me too. I'm just not convinced that is actually happening in this case. So now we actually do have a mad white man who's come up who just sound like he hating, right? Like that's all that sounds like is that he's hating. But what he did was tap on into something about Deion. I talked about this with Jason Goff the other day, and this is something I want to think more about. But I don't know if we've really stopped and done the math on this. All right. 35 years ago. And it is 35 years ago because he says he did this before his senior year of college. 1988, Deion Sanders sat in his dorm room and created the brand of primetime, right? Looked around. He decided that corners really weren't making that much money, and he was going to figure out how to do it, and he created the brand of primetime. Primetime went so far as they used to do the walk. Like at Florida State, they do the walk from the dorm to the stadium, you know, to get people charged up. Not Deion. Deion for big games, including, I believe, the Florida game that year where he rented a stretch limo and came out in an all-white tux. He has been thinking about this since he was 21 years old. You fast forward to right now, it's the same brand. How many brands can you think about that have endured for 35 years? He's made some tweaks. Right. He's made some adjustments. He's added some stuff. He's taken some things out. That dude is on the sideline, and maybe people are talking about this on Twitter, but I haven't seen anybody bring this up. He wearing a gold chain with a gold whistle around it. I assure you he can't blow in that, right? like this is 35 years of maintaining a brand that is adapted, that is adjusted, that has gone through highs, that has gone through lows, and somehow is a brand that works as a college football coach.
Yes.
That's genius.
Football is back in full swing with another week of epic games, and who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets.
Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September.
Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code Jenkins to sign up. New customers can bet $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code Jenkins. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling by calling 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See dkng.co/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
Yeah. A lot of people are like, I don't understand why Deion is such a big deal. And I think it's just that simple, is that he's fucking cool. And he's been cool as long as we've known him, right? And the whole thing is, he's not the first quote unquote cool football player. We heard Joe Namath was cool, but the thing is, their coolness doesn't transcend eras the way Deion's coolness has, right? Deion is kind of like the blueprint for the braggadocious, cocky, arrogant, flashy athlete. Because I look at old pictures of Namath, and they're like, oh, he was so cool. He wore a fur coat on the sideline. Nigga, that fur coat looked like the shit that Silky Johnson was wearing at the Players Ball. That shit ain't cool now. You know what I'm saying? That picture Joe Burrow took with the cigar at LSU, that laps that shit, bro.
Right. For sure.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah. So I think a big part of why Deion is such a big deal in the sports world is that, how many cool coaches have we ever had, bro? It's like Pat Riley and him, and that's it. And Pat Riley was cool in a way that just appealed to adults. 12-year-old me didn't think Pat Riley was cool. 12-year-old me thought Deion was cool. You know what I'm saying?
I feel like there's been some, right? There are different kinds of cool, and there's a very Southern archetype of cool that different people have. I think
we've had a ton of charismatic coaches.
Yeah.
Very few cool coaches.
Yeah. Well, Barry Switzer, I think, for example, would qualify as the cool coach. You're right. There aren't that many, because honestly, cool as a commodity is a relatively new concept. People our age and a little older in the Deion age, they the first motherfuckers to think that you're supposed to be cool for your whole life. You were supposed to maybe be cool, then get a job or go off to the war or something like that, and then grow up. And all of us are like, why would I want to grow up?
Wear hard bottoms and carry a briefcase and shit. We still carrying backpacks to work, nigga.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I don't wear anything with a hard bottom on my feet.
Period.
We different. But Deion's cool. The thing about Joe Namath's cool is, Joe Namath's cool when he start talking, because his cool is cool, right? Deion, his cool is almost hot. Because the difference between him and most cool people aren't obnoxious. And at his worst and at his most youthful of this, that's an obnoxious dude, right?
Right.
But you really he wasn't easy about it. He ain't letting the attention come to him like most cool people do. No, he's jumping out in front. But he was famous and cool and revolutionary at I think a very particular point in time in the American zeitgeist, which is basic cable era, where I think in the 3-channel era, you could make the argument that you being in media and stuff was a reflection of your fame. The basic cable era made it where it was not just a reflection of your fame, but it amplified your fame. It spread it out and it made you bigger. And so you take that plus a man who has an argument for being one of the 10 greatest athletes of the 20th century in the United States, which I think has been undersold. I had even forgotten about this, and I grew up a fanatical Braves fan. That dude hit 533 in 6 games of a World Series. If the Braves had won the World Series in 1992, Deion Sanders would have all the things that he has on his resume right now, plus World Series MVP. I don't think that we can explain to younger people just how famous Deion Sanders was. Right. So now you translate this to this time in college football where all the coaches are boring, right? None of them are interesting. Say what you want about Dabo Swinney, at least he got a personality. At least he give you something to talk about. None of these guys give you nothing to talk about. Ain't nobody going to be writing all these books about these dudes that people wrote about, Bo Schembechler and Woody Hayes and all of this. They're all the same. They all dress the same. They all wearing the same polo that got sent down from the corporate office that they sell it on the website that you're going to go see at the golf course that all the white dudes is going to have on.
With their New Balance on and their khakis, you feel me?
Right. And so what Deion has done that I think is actually interesting and quietly kind of old school is turn the coach back into a brand. The coach used to be a brand. The programs around them used to be brands. They're just boring now. Like there's nothing. Kirby Smart's won 2 national championships. He don't give a damn about Kirby Smart. He don't make you feel good. He don't make you feel bad. He don't make you feel nothing. And Deion is the first coach to come out in a long time to actually make people feel something.
What's interesting too is the sideline for me. Like the people I see on the sideline are people you see on sidelines. Like Wu-Tang and Cameron on the fucking sideline. You know what I mean? Yeah. He appeals to the nigga in me in a particular way. You know what I'm saying? Like my sister, after his interview of his first after the TCU win, she says, he's such a nigga. I love him. You know what I mean? And like he appeals to that sentiment. I have never personally, I mean, there's few people you see that are themselves in that way in public. And I love seeing that. And he's doing that in a space where I didn't think you could be able to do that. Because like you said, even the greats are robots. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he's Prime, even if that's a created personality, it feels genuine to the people watching. You know what I mean? And so I feel like it's like Cameron being on the sideline. That's insane. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And CU, and that's the second whitest place I've ever been in my entire life. Behind Coleman, Alabama, which there was not a single other in Coleman, Alabama. Boulder is the second whitest place I've ever been. You know what I mean? So it's just wild.
Let me tell you something that's interesting about the sideline now that you mentioned it. It's something that I didn't realize. Like, you know, all the country music people moving to Austin. Like there was a stretch there where all the country stars
leaving Nashville, going to Austin?
Yeah, like Willie Nelson and his circle of people moved to Austin. And apparently that started with Darrell Royal because Willie was cool with Darrell Royal, the head coach at Texas. And that's when that move came, that's when people started doing it because Willie's on the sideline, right? Which is to say, that's kind of how far I got to go back. Like, this isn't the same as Matthew McConaughey, who's just a big fan of Texas. He can get on the sidelines and he goes there. Deion's over there looking at the Red Rock schedule, seeing who played a gig last night and being like, yo, do y'all want to come through? And if you are of a particular age, Deion Sanders is so famous. Like something that didn't really land with me so much when it happened, and I've thought about more now, which is the magnitude of Hammer being on the sideline of those games for the Falcons. Hammer at that point was about as close to Michael Jackson as you could be without being Michael Jackson. He's on the sidelines, not because he's down with the Falcons, because of Deion. Hammer gave Deion a record deal, and I think they tried to make 2 albums out of that. Like, he was that fucking famous. And if anything has happened in these last few months, it's my reminder that, damn, this dude really, really, really was famous in a way that you can't even get that famous now.
Yeah. He was a singular guy. Like I said, when we were kids, he was a god. He was on, as far as athletes that we idolize, like he was up there with the MJs and the Mike Tysons. Like he was on that tier. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you know, like I said, I think a whole lot of this just comes back to the fact that, you know, his coolness has transcended decades. Like I said.
Shoes. He had hot shoes.
Bro, we wanted his shoes like MJ's, bro. We wanted them Deion shoes.
I got both pairs of the Diamond Turf ones. I got like 2 pairs of the Diamond Turf 2s. Iconic shoes. And the thing is, like I said, his coolness has transcended in ways that a lot of athletes' coolness hasn't. Like you know, Shador just tried doing the high step and end zone dance just last week. You know what I mean? That shit
look hard though too when he did it. I'm like, damn, his son in there doing a high step. That's crazy. You feel me? With the Deion's on.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the thing I looked at. I was like, oh, he got them on. Like
he got them on.
They about to come back. Like this will be very interesting because I do not believe that Colorado is a Nike school, and Nike's about to be like Diamond Turf back.
Yeah.
How you love that? Diamond Turf back. Nah, this different, man. Like I don't like I wound up trying to make this point on Twitter with some people, and I couldn't get them to understand it. I ain't gonna ever be rooting against him. Right? I don't really rock with the entirety of his steeds, but way my black works ain't gonna really be no rooting against Deion, and ain't gonna be no like acknowledging what the truth is. And the truth is, he's that guy. Like he makes. So where this gets frustrating, a lot of dick riding going on, right? Like you see it, you watch it. It's a heavy proportion of dick riding that's going on. And
two helpings. 2 handfuls of
Yeah.
dick, you know.
Yeah, but what makes it
Or what have
wild
you.
is we seeing people engage in that are like really cool and really famous and like really like Dion has that effect on people. People
Mhm.
want to be down with Dion.
He makes
just
the
made-
famous people forget they're famous. You know what I
Yes.
mean? When you're around Dion, like you're nervous, like the people are nervous around you when they're when like a regular person like me is talking to a famous person. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, I think you mentioned the staying power of his brand. We have high school football players in Long Beach who, when he got hired at Colorado, were posting on their IG stories, "This is my favorite athlete of all time." Do you know, as a person his age, to be cool to 16 and 17-year-old black kids in Long Beach? That's like,
Yeah.
I don't even have words to describe how
Yeah.
rare that would be.
I will say this though. I would like to ask that young man, just curious, is your favorite rapper KRS-One?
No, like they don't even listen to Drake. That's what that. But that's
Have
why I
they
was looking at
seen
this. And I
Dion?
was,
They
it
just saw
stopped me.
highlights. It's
It
kinda like the
stopped me,
kids-
right?
Yeah,
But these are the kids that make fun of people for having MJ Braun GOAT debates. Like, you talk about 2 old people. Why do I give a fuck about that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Paul George is the oldest basketball player who lives to these kids. Like,
Well, I'd be curious, like if those kids play defensive back. And the reason I say that, and I like people get into the Dion is unquestionably the best corner of all time. You don't know that. Like I'm not saying that Dion is not. I'm just saying that most of the people who say that have never given this any actual thought and can't consider who number 2 is. But Dion, again, the first person to ever make us think about who the best corner is of all time. He said it, and we're like, cool, we'll ride with it. But he's definitely, without question, way up there, right? Like of those I've seen with my own eyes. We're talking about him.
Just him and Rod Woodson, him, Rod Woodson, and Reeves probably. Like those are the 3 for me.
And Champ Bailey, right?
Yeah,
like
Champ
that's
for sure.
that's where we get in that zone. But think about this for a second. You seen that clip of Jason Kelsey talking about corners, like playing corner so hard they don't even let white guys try?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
But I do believe that corner has to be the hardest position to play. And the reason that I believe it has to be the hardest position to play is it's the only position that you could be regular size and play. Like every other position in football, you have to size yourself into to be able to play. Corner
Darryl
is
Green
the
was
one-
5'9".
Yeah. Like my man Dominique Foxworth, you don't know that's a pro athlete unless you tell him. Like when you walk around with a corner, that's just like walking around with a person if they ain't got like a shirt, like a tank top on or something like that.
Right.
There are more people eligible to be a corner than there is to be anything else. And this dude athletically was that much better than everybody else while in the middle of seasons holding down a side job playing baseball.
Crazy.
I have a question. Like, I think, Bo, you, from what I've seen you talk about, I think you and Tyler have a very similar thought process around Dion. And I'm just kind of curious about that to the extent, Tyler's talked about it on the show, to the extent you guys are comfortable talking about it. It's like, it does feel.
I always get a little nervous when the white guys like
when there's that
as
long of a wind up.
You guys are talking about
it. Well, it's been Tyler's point. It's like Tyler was like full on double middle finger fuck Dion after the way he left Jackson State, right? But also,
I haven't switched on that. I hated the way he left Jackson State, but continue.
Right.
Yep.
But you still say you're not rooting for him though.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm not rooting against him either. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because you know, like I mentioned before, the whole thing, if you're rooting against Dion, you're rooting against his players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the college coaches and players' performance are so intrinsically tied that my favorite thing about this whole move to Colorado is how Shedeur and Travis Hunter have cashed the fuck out. Travis Hunter's going to be a top 5 pick when he comes out. Shedeur has established himself as a first-round QB. Them boys are getting it back, and I love that for them. But like I said, I'm never going to rock with the way he left Jackson State.
I mean, I think the only thing we disagree on is that I'm rooting for him. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't fuck with how he left Jackson State. You know what I'm saying? I don't fuck with like how he built the fan base in Jackson State when he was coming around, like the verbiage he used and appealed to country nigga. You know what I'm saying? Like God put me here and all that. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, like there's something about him that I root for, you know, even after seeing that part of it that I didn't like of Dion. So I think that's the only place we defer.
I'm gonna say this. My whole thing is we didn't need all the theatrics when he left Jackson State.
We didn't. No,
We
was
all
wrong.
knew Jackson State was a pit stop. Shit, we all know Colorado's a pit stop.
Right, right.
I was never upset that he left Jackson State. I just didn't like the way he left Jackson State because
For sure. Yeah.
the thing about that Jackson State hire is we all were a bit skeptical when Deion took that job because the thing about being an HBCU coach is, being a coach at an HBCU is different than being a Power 5 coach because there's like a certain level of selflessness that you have to have and implement as an HBCU coach. Like HBCUs are not NFL mills that are just cranking out pros like your Power 5s, like your Clemsons, like your Bamas. No, you're going to have like 2 or 3 pros a decade as an HBCU football coach, right? That's not the main focus at an HBCU. These are kids who this is like the last stop that for most of them where their athletic ability is going to take them. And it took them all the way to a full ride for a college education, right? So the great HBCU coaches have an understanding that football is not the end all be all here. They understand that the main objective as an HBCU coach is you are a black man who is going to guide and mentor these black teenage kids and help them grow into being responsible, disciplined, successful young adults, right? And Deion, he was saying all the shit that led us to believe that he understood the magnitude of the uniqueness of the position he was in at Jackson State, right? His actions, a lot of his actions lended to that too. Like Deion was very much on his kids' asses about, class attendance, about getting good grades, about giving back to the community, right? It
the
seemed
nerve, by the way, of the man who got us the Deion Sanders rule because he skipped a whole semester and had to scramble at the end to get an online degree so he could be a coach. Sorry about that.
No. Very much needed context. But it seemed like this was a dude who a lot of us thought was too self-centered to be the selfless mentor that HBCU coaches need to be. And it felt like he was proving us wrong for a little bit there. Then he left. And like I said, I did not have an issue with him leaving. But he just did that smear job on his way out, where he needed to make this all about him in a way that it didn't even need to be. But it's he tried to pull that tired ass self-appointed
about the money and all that shit too.
Yeah. He went and tried to pull that tired ass self-appointed HBCU savior who was let down by the very people he tried to save bullshit. And it's like, we didn't need that, bro. Take your $30 million and go to Colorado. He's telling us he wasn't supported enough at that school that has led the FCS in attendance for years. He hopped out there with Shannon Sharp. Shouts out to the homie Shannon. Welcome to the volume, my boy. And he went on his show trying to finger wag at JSU boosters by pointing to the fact that like only 8% of HBCU alums donate to their alma maters. And that's the same rate that white PWI alums donate to their alma maters as well. When he's saying folks at JSU weren't digging in their pocketbooks, when JSU had a fundraiser while he was there with a $500,000 target and they smashed that shit and raised $600,000, right? So I didn't like I said, I just didn't like the way he left. I didn't like how he resorted to perpetuating the whole HBCUs are broken institutions ran by broken black people with broken mentalities, just to save face to the fact that he was leaving after 3 years. You didn't need to do that, right? We all knew Jackson State was a pit stop. It's like he tried to sell us on being all his, for us, by us shit. And then he was like, yeah, I ain't gonna lie to y'all. The white man's ice is actually colder. That's what I didn't like about how he left.
That, and I think you were in the same place that I was, and then I was doubly confounded because I had people accusing me of attacking a black man when I was defending black people, right? Like your priority is this one black man because he's Deion Sanders, ignoring all the disrespect that had been done to black people. But that's done now, right? Like there's nothing I can do or say about what happened at Jackson State. It's a wrap now. He's now the coach at Colorado. And as I said at the time, I'd have took that job too. I wouldn't have done it the way that he did, but I absolutely would have taken that job. And look, part of why I'm like being careful about how much I say about this and when is just because what we're really going to know about this team is after Oregon and after USC, right? Like that's when we're really going to know what the deal is. Nebraska as a game wasn't really going to tell us anything. I don't know how much Colorado State is going to tell us, but the truth is, this is going to be ups and downs in this voyage, in this journey, for this season, for the whole time or whatever it is. But I do kind of feel like being present in the moment to a degree, and it allows an appreciation for the fact that they've already exceeded the expectations that most people had. Shedeur, I watched him play a little bit at Jackson State, and I thought he was a good FCS level quarterback, right? Not HBCU level, FCS. Like I think he was at the top level of FCS, but it wasn't enough to make me be like, he gonna kill it if he get on this biggest stage. And he's been so much better in these two games. Like, I didn't watch the first game, but in that second game, he was so much better than I had thought that he could be at that level. Like, that stuff is really cool that they've managed to pull that off, and the level of excitement. This is the biggest story outside of the NFL. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't pop his Achilles, this is the biggest story in sports. People are coming all over to watch it, and it's great. And I'm watching, it's the idea that we got Black America has a program again is kind of weird because the dynamics are so much different this go round. But there's a whole generation of kids that don't realize we used to have like a handful of our teams. Right? Colorado, which didn't become that when they had a squad full of Crips and was winning the national championship. But
they had a black QB and we still weren't really rocking with him. They had Cordell, in the 90s.
They won a national championship with a black quarterback and you don't even remember his name.
Who was it? Shit.
Darian Hagan.
Okay. I did have a Cordell Stewart in eighth grade, though, but that's by the time he was with the Steelers, I believe. But anyway.
Yeah. Cordell was a beast at Colorado. A beast. But see, that's another part, too. Part of why this is working at Colorado is that Deion is like weirdly the opposite side of the Bill McCartney coin. And for those of you who are familiar with the Promise Keepers, the people that show up and get 80,000 people at your stadium to sing white people gospel songs and do all that stuff, the man behind that is the former head coach at the University of Colorado, Bill McCartney, the dude they won national championships with. I thought that Deion's Jesus game wouldn't work that well in such a blue area, blue versus red. But then I forgot their OG did this exactly like Deion did. Like, he low-key found the right place for him to be. And at least for 2 weeks, man, that shit cracking.
It's a phenomenon to me, bro. I'm seeing people from here talking about I'm rooting for, like, you have USC here and they're rooting for Colorado. You know what I'm saying? Like, people who are traditionally USC fans, like, I wish you the best, but the niggas over here, I'm going with my people. You feel what I'm saying? Buffalo. I've never seen anything like this, G.
Yeah, talk to those people at halftime of the USC game.
We're going to see.
That's what we're going to find out. And, I'm only saying that because I don't know how much you fellas have gotten to watch that quarterback that USC has.
Special.
But, woo!
He's different, bro.
Well,
he's different, he black too.
Yeah. But John and I had talked about that. Like, it's broken. This story's broken containment. Like, I have friends who do not give a fuck about college football who are like making plans to have people over for the USC Colorado game. Like, it's a title fight. You know what I mean? And yes, like the DBs on both teams and the quarterbacks on both teams, it could be like 120-point game. It could be a really fun game, but it does feel like it's exceeded that level of like, a certain number of people are following the way he left Jackson State. A certain number of people are following like, oh, someone got hired at Colorado. I have friends who are barely sports fans that are like, this is the story right now that I care about. So that's where I'm interested to see where it goes, because y'all are paying attention and you're thinking about the way that he was moving. Like, he ultimately, there's some level of con in the way that he's presented, like the way that he's doing stuff. And he's been successful in doing it. That's why, as you pointed out, he's been able to run it for, decade on decade on decade. But it feels like, and not to super redraw the lines, like, it does feel almost a little like Trumpian in the way that it's like, your enemies are my enemies. I'm making I'm making the people you want to be mad. So like, forgive the stuff I've done, in the way that it's always been sort of confusing to me to see evangelicals taking up for Donald Trump, having grown up when we grew up. It feels like he's trying to pull the same thing. Like, I know you want someone to make these fucking white media guys feel like shit, and I'm going to be the one to do it, so fuck whatever I said before. Like, this is what we're selling right now,
But they were riding with him when he said the stuff before. Like, that's the thing. It's not even like I do see some people who I think, and I guess maybe to a degree, people think I'm one of them, who have tempered their feelings about Deion. And my feelings about Deion have not been tempered. They just not what we're talking about right now. Like, what we're talking about right now is an actual legitimate college football story. And what I hope, and this is what I wonder if people go look around and see, there ain't no money in being boring. And everybody seems to believe somehow that there is. There's a risk minimization. You're not going to mess up no money necessarily being boring. But there ain't really no money in being boring. And returning an actual real live personality to college football, which is and should be the most personality driven of all of these sports, This is that's the part that I want to see. If people realize that, hey, man, you might want to get somebody that can like really, really run a room and will do it in front of people and will say some things that might be wrong every now and then. Okay, cool. Like, yo, let's do this that way. That right there is where I think maybe there could be like some real influence that comes out of this. Because I really sat here and thought about it. It's like, when was the last time prior to this that you had a coach that made you feel anything?
You're so right. I mean, like Lincoln Riley comes to USC, he gets everyone fired up about USC. I'm not turning the TV on for a press conference. I don't give a fuck what Lincoln Riley has to say. It's just cool he brought Caleb to USC, you know. But like, but you're right.
Sorry.
Right, yeah, but like they're all these people are HR people. You're right. Like it's like they all get up. It's like I could say the words lived experience. I could talk, like, you know what I mean. But they're not like, they don't bring any personality. You're so right about Kirby Smart. I don't give a fuck about Kirby Smart at Georgia. Like I could not possibly give less of a fuck. Deion, I'm watching everything he's got to say.
I will say I think Dabo Swinney evokes a lot of emotions, but it's not.
Yes, he does.
Intrigue.
He's the one.
Yeah,
he's the one.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he evokes the same type of intrigue that Deion does. I think Dabo has really just done a pivot to being like such a 180 into being like a villain that we all fucking love to hate now. Because the whole thing about Dabo is like when he came out, we were like, oh, look at this good old country down home boy, you know, making jokes about how, well, if you want to wrestle a pig, you might as well take your shirt off or whatever the fuck, right? and then one day Dabo was like, well, golly gee willikers, I just think all labor should be exploited. We were like, whoa, what the fuck? We're like, who is this guy? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I do think that Dabo is like the only other coach who evokes emotion. But like I said, I don't know if he evokes the intrigue that Deion has.
Yeah, the thing I give Dabo credit for is that he's true to himself. Like, I don't buy a lot of what Dabo is selling, and I think that he's using a state institution to run a church, which is its own problem. Like that Clemson program, like it's a little too close to God. Like you're just not in this country. You can't do that if you're the state. And I think that's going to ultimately be a Deion question that comes up at some point also. I mean, he's wearing JC on his sleeve, you know, going out there.
Right.
No shade to him for his beliefs, but that can easily trample over into we don't recruit you unless you're ... You know, and that becomes problematic. But something I was thinking about with like the black program thing and where this is different than the other black programs. And this is where I think it's something that's fair to look at Deion is this has got to be bigger than you at some point, though, because the reason that Miami was a black program wasn't because of Jimmy Johnson. It was because of the players, right? Are we going to get to know players beyond your son and your number one protege? You know what I mean? Like you should be the front that sells this. But then once you get in there, it's supposed to bring a light to everything else that goes on there. And what Deion has always been good at is putting a light on Deion. The point ain't never been to put the light on other people. Like this should now get us, like it's worked out well with Shedeur because I think we're seeing him in a light that we probably wouldn't have if he wasn't Deion's son and he wasn't associated with him in this way. But the light got to get shared.
Yeah, I'm curious about the people who think that Deion is just railing against, you know, the white system, because I don't think it's that. I think Deion is just doing the same shit white coaches have done just as a black guy.
Tyler, do you think that's how he's selling it? Like, do you agree that's how he's selling it, though?
I mean, Deion himself, like, there's a 60 Minutes interview. He said the goal of his time in Jackson State was to be disruptive, was to be a college coach that they had never seen before. And then it's like you leave Jackson State and you go on Rich Eisen with them white folks and you yucking it up and having them crack up at that trash ass joke he made about wanting linebackers from single parent homes and quarterbacks from two parents. I'm like, bro. Yeah, I'm like, bro, that even white people know not to say that in public anymore, dog. You know what I'm saying? Like that is some 1986 white people shit you saying right now. You know,
it just looked different. It just looked different.
Exactly. Right. That's all it is, because I don't think that he's doing anything that is unique. I don't think he's railing against any system. I will say this, Deion's timing is impeccable because we are in the NIL era and Deion has always been about cashing out. He wants his kids to get paid, right? Like he wants everybody to cash out. And that is something that where, you know, of course you look at the talent pool of college football, it is mostly black people. So if he wants, you know, college kids to get paid, he's like, yo, I want most of these black kids to get paid, and that, you know, intrinsically becomes a pro-black stance in some degree, right? So I think that the timing worked out great for Deion in that aspect, but I don't think Deion's doing anything different than any of these white coaches do.
But see, the NIL thing though is where the shine on the players' part becomes very important. Right? Because they got to get the shine so that they can get the money, because otherwise they just get the money to Deion, Who's gonna take it all? All I tell you. Let me tell you what I can't wait for. And I don't know what day it's coming, but you know goddamn well that day is coming. When are we gonna find out about the extension? Because he's getting paid $5 million a year this year, and he is clearly worth no less than 15 to them. Like, while I've always thought that Colorado would probably be a pit stop, he's worth so much money to them in a way that I don't know if it's worth it to anybody else. And also, I don't know how long, like, we're in the novelty stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how long this keeps being cool or what happens when they lose some games or anything else. But I bet you, we know Deion. Deion don't walk to the president's office already asking questions about where the dollar's at.
They had to make some shit shake to give him that 5, didn't they? I don't know they can afford him to give him what he's worth.
They hired him and didn't know where the money was coming from.
Right. They had to figure it out.
They'll find the money to get him now.
Especially in that rich-ass, that area, too. They're going to find the bread. But, yeah, I mean, if they get smacked up by, USC and Oregon, you know what I mean? He might, that 5 might be his value.
But the college football media did him a big favor in that people, I mean, there were writers saying this is like one of the worst, FCS rosters they'd ever seen. Like, people set the expectations such. If they lose 2 games to Oregon and USC, I think, we'll see if the bigger stuff dies out.
Losses.
For sure. I'm talking about the excitement that draws people to the sidelines and watching TV. That'll get you the dollars, from like having televised games. You know what I mean? Like for like a lot of people, that's like you said, we'll see how they feel at halftime of that USC game. The folks that's from USC, from Southern Cal, that's rooting for Colorado right now. If old boy is cooking their ass, they might be like, let's pump the brakes a little bit with this fandom. You know what I mean? So I'm talking about the novelty and the novelty obviously wears off over time, but the excitement of the program if they're not beating teams like that. Because, a lot of people probably watch because they think, hey, this team, they could smack up a USC. If they win against USC, it'll be a close game. But USC could cook their ass. You know what I'm saying? But a lot of people that are watching don't really necessarily see it that way because they are believing, they attach to the hype at this point. You feel me? So that's why I'm saying that value might not be that value if they got beat by somebody like that, because the people that watched the Warriors because they were the best team in the world at the time that aren't watching basketball anymore might not be watching Colorado because they were just watching because of the excitement that was surrounding them. If that can kind of taint that a little bit. That's where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah. What a tie, man. What a tie. Like, could you have imagined in 1995, you'd be talking about Deion Sanders, head coach? Because this is another thing I give him, too. He one of them, if you can see it, you can be it, motherfuckers, right? Like, I gotta admit, I don't really be buying too much into that. I figure out what I'm good at, and then I go do it. You got one of these cats that come out here and think he's good at everything, right? Like, the belief that he has in himself is amazing, and people are like, you should be inspired by that. I hope you're as talented.
Yeah, because Deion's path is not easily, replicated. We mentioned how his allure is that he's cool, and the whole thing is the grind to become a head coach eliminates a lot of cool guys, right? Like, the usual path that you're gonna have to take to be a head coach. Like, if Deion was not the charismatic icon that he is, he'd have had to be a DB coach somewhere. He would have had to go. He would have to be a defensive coordinator somewhere. Then he would work his way up to a head coach, and that would be about a 10-year process with about 4 or 5 different stops. And Deion, to his credit, shouts to that man for knowing his worth. He was like, nope, I am charismatic. I'm a big enough name to jump to the front of the line. And he had JSU who accommodated him in that. And like I said, that's another thing I don't like about how, his exit there, because there is no other, school. There's only an HBCU would have given, Deion that shot to jump to the front of the line like that. So that's another reason I didn't like, the smear job he did, on his way out. But, neither here nor there. But yeah, like I said, the process that leads to people becoming a head coach eliminates a lot of cool guys, because cool guys don't grind, bro. It
ain't gonna settle for making $8 over that 10 years either, because you ain't the bread ain't there till you become a head coach. So yeah.
Otherwise, at some point, Deion just would have been in the facility one day, and some kid came in, and he'd have been like, "I started off on floors just like you. Now
the fries. Right? Next week, the fries."
Like, anybody else got to do that? And look, I don't blame him, man. I'm not I would not want to do those things either, right? Like at that age or whatever, I would not want to have to, like the journalism equivalent, do I feel like covering high schools? No, not necessarily. I was at that point at 27 years old. I was like, yeah, I'm not willing to do that. I'm going to have to figure out a hustle to get around that step. And Deion figured it out, right? Like this, like, let's appreciate it for what it is right now. But I want everybody to know this is going to have some twists and some turns.
Facts.
It will not be a straight line, and he will not handle everything well. And when he doesn't handle some things well, everybody gonna have to decide how much truth they want to tell.